picked up the wrong week sniffing glue.
Do you want to build a snowman? It doesn't have to be a snowman.
Well, good morning. It is Tuesday and it's time to get back to work on the Franklin, and had a correspondent spoke to Ralph yesterday, and he has already sent out the lighting kit to me, so that should be a couple of days away. So I need to get things ready for its arrival, so once it gets here I can really start to jamming this thing together. And what I'm concentrating on today are the window masks. There are masks for the plain old windows that go along the edge of the hull. There are all kinds of little clear bits and bobs in the detail parts that go up inside the horseshoe on the back. This which I am calling the horseshoe on the back. There are all kinds of clear bits that need to go in there. And these odd windows and the beacons and things like that need to be masked off. The rear of the nacelles, there's a ball that sticks out there that needs to be masked off. So things like that I'm working on, and also starting to chew out the lighting channel, or the wiring channels, for how the wiring is going to get from point A to point B. I can get that kind of stuff ready, knowing that what is the shape of what is coming. I can kind of start getting that ready to receive it. So let's, without much further ado, let's start working on some window masks. Alrighty then, I've made one pass at making the window templates, and sized those up and did some adjusting and made a second pass, and those are the ones we're going to keep because they seem to be just about right. And of course here on the windows, you can go to one of two ways. Just covering the window glass itself and leaving the ring around it, or covering up the whole thing completely, whichever one is your choice. But then there's those weird little angle ones, and you can see back in here, inside there you go, there's a window mask back in there, which will allow you to paint the window sills and still keep the glass clean. So an effective solution for the windows has been reached, and now we're on to the more specialty windows, like the big picture window in the front and these clear inserts that go in the horseshoe area. On the instructions they refer to this as the Citadel area. Interesting name. I would have just called it, I don't know what, the inner horseshoe, but we seem to have a good solution for that. So now I can actually start inserting some of these clear parts from the back, knowing that I can mask them off effectively and go ahead and paint the outsides of them. The one last one that's giving me a little bit of a pause is in masking the domes that will stick out of the fantail pieces. These are these guys here, and there's a clear dome that sticks out. So I've been trying to do it in half measures, and I guess the only way to do it really is to go ahead and glue one in. I was trying to fit it in there, but it's an odd fit that doesn't want to stay just by friction. You really have to glue it, and it lays in at a weird angle. So I'm going to actually have to glue one in and get it dried and all that before I can come up with a good, clear way to mask that. And that's it for the mystery of masking. The next bit is going to be starting to cut channels and chases for the wiring that has to go through it. So that's the next big bit of fun. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back. It's Wednesday and we're having a snow day here in Raleigh. Getting a few inches of accumulation, and as you can tell, the birds and the squirrels are enjoying it. Having a bit of fun with nature here. Like I said, we're getting about an inch of snow, maybe as much as 4 inches, which naturally means everything in North Carolina has ground to a halt. So I don't know if that means the mail is running today, and if the mail isn't running today, then that puts me another day behind on getting the light kit from Ralph. So I will take advantage. Look at the little birdies at the feeders. Lovely. And, ooh, isn't that pretty? Yes, welcome to Nature Time with Lou. Focus. Yes, they're enjoying a bit of suet, and the squirrels are out scampering in the snow. Like I say, if I get no light kit from Ralph today, I will have to continue to work on the Franklin as best I can without it. Well, I'm back. I just had to drive an order to the post office before it got too impassable out there. It is shaping up to be quite a lovely snow event. But back to the Franklin. Since we'll be getting no mail today, no lighting kit coming in, which gives me more time to get these guys ready. These are the fiber optics that are going to be the thrusters on the underside of the saucer. So I've kind of got those trained back, and they're way longer than they need to be. But because they are fat, they are 1 mil, there you go. They are 1.0 mm fibers. So they are fat and do not bend as easily as the real skinny stuff. So I'm being careful with that. But what I'm going to do now is just drop some epoxy around them to hold them in place until later. They need to be held down, and now's the best time to do it. I am also using fibers for the these two little lights on the back of the bridge area there. There are plastic inserts in the kit, but I think fibers will do a better job for that, and since I had them out anyway, I figured it's just as easy to do this. Well, welcome back. It is Thursday. It is the gateway to the weekend, and this is the second day of the snow event, the self-imposed isolation that happens when we get 3 or 4 inches of snow in Raleigh and everything stops. It's beautiful to look at. It also means there'll be no mail. As you can see, my trash has been out for a few days, and that won't be picked up today either. But at least it looks as though the little birdies are enjoying hopping around looking for some feed. And since there will be no lighting today on the Franklin, we will have to make do doing other things. And I shot out the back door of the wildlife. And I threw out some extra seeds. So we've got squirrels and we've got birds. And look at that. Ooh, that's a pretty one. And a red-headed woodpecker. All birds of all colors here. Oh, look at that. Big old fat cardinal. Okay, enough nature. Okay, this is turning out really neat. I want to show it to you. On the Franklin itself, there are these pinstripes, and they are there in some references, and some references they are not. And I am going to allow them, or I'm going to make templates for them because I think they're a neat feature. Now, I'm also using the Hallmark ornament as an example because the people at Hallmark are professionals. They've done their research. They were probably given access to a lot of the same source materials as Mobius was. And they show these orange pinstripes on the engines. Now, having seen an advanced peek at the decals, Mobius is not including these stripes as part of the decal set. You will either need to paint them on or leave them off. So I am providing things to allow you to paint them on. And they go around there. There you can see them, and along the bottom there. And it's that nice distinctive orange color. Now, in some reference pictures I've seen, it looks like that's just a rust line and not actually a paint line. So maybe it's a little bit of both. But I'm going to put these marks in to allow you to paint them. And this is a technique that I've had a lot of success with in the past. And what basically I'm going to do, and recommend people do the same, is, excuse me, is to paint this area with your orange stripe color or a reddish. If you want to go more traditional Federation pinstriping, it's more of a red than it is an orange. but do a red pinstripe there, and then cover it with the vinyl. So you're painting a larger area than the vinyl covers. And then you're going to cover the area you want to keep with the vinyl, and then go over top of that with your metallic base coat. And what that's going to allow you to do is when time you peel this line up, you're going to have a red mark where the tape was. And so I'm coming up with the pinstripes for the engine, and this could be obvious on both engines, but the bottom one and the top one. And I'm really digging how that's turning out. I was kind of questioning whether I could keep that fine line with the vinyl, whether it would plot it. And yes, it does take a little bit of a steady hand to put that down and make sure that it stays on straight, because it's, you know, a pinstripe's going to want to waver. But I think that's going to work just fine. And now to do the larger stripes that are on the pylons. Well, that worked out just great on those wings. I got to change that angle just a little bit more, bring that out so that it fills in that corner. But good lordy, for the first stripe, that's not too shabby. Usually I have to go through 2 or 3 iterations before I hit things on the head, and that's right off the bat. Now they're onto the bottom as well. Now if you want to, you can cover up that trailing edge with more tape, and I'll provide some plain old straight runs to do that, to cover up that trailing edge. They did it here on the Hallmark ornament. You see it's orange all the way around. You may or may not want to do that. I don't know. That looks like that exhaust there, or that detail on the angle piece. Let me find the model. It is this piece here. It is this piece here. You may not wish to paint that. You may wish to have that be the metallic color. It goes in right there. Let me see. It goes in right there. And if you want to make that orange, you simply can't just cover it more with the either painter's tape or the straight edge stuff. But one way or the other, you can get stripes out of these, certainly. And it might take, once you get this lined up, you may want to trace that with an X-Acto just to make sure it's fitting the contours just right, and then, peel out the excess before you spray. But I think that's definitely going to solve that problem just nicely. Okay, now that leaves me with one more job to do today before I really can put the lighting kit in. From whence it gets here, one thing I can do today is start cutting some chases for wiring. Now I know that in the pylon we're going to have room for a ribbon cable to come out of here, go through the pylon and out to the nacelle. Easy enough to do. There, I've already drawn on there with pencil where about the cutout needs to be. By the time you fit these two together, there's enough room for a ribbon cable in there, not to worry. However, you're going to have to cut into this part here where it goes into the nacelle. The nacelle attachment for this kit is probably as clever as I've seen, and pardon me for rattling around here. It's designed so that if you wanted to build this without lighting, and you're finishing your engine and you're doing that, you can simply slide it on top of. Well, let me put the camera down. Hold on a second. I've got the top of the pylon clamped down, and I've got this sitting in the build cradle / stand. Everything's bouncing nicely. Now, so you can slide that down on top of the stand there, and you get a nice secure pylon. So now let me take it apart and show you what's happening. Okay, what's happening when you slide that nacelle down on top of this pylon is it goes straight into that pocket, and that pocket does one wonderful thing. It keeps the nacelle square and level to the pylon. They can't really tell here because the whole thing is jimmied up at an angle, but that is, once it's in tight, it doesn't rack, it doesn't spin, it doesn't warp. That is probably the cleverest idea I have seen in the long history of attaching nacelles to pylons. that is probably the smartest way I've ever seen of doing this. Of course, it helps the fact that the pylon is so wide, and you're not trying to balance, you know, the levelness of a nacelle on a tiny point at the top of a pylon like you would, say, the classic Enterprise. But because you've got that big wide pocket, that's really going to keep those nacelles in their proper orientation. Unfortunately, if you're going to light this, you kind of have to do it half and half. You kind of have to put this half on the pylon before you attach the inboard half. And instead of just sliding the whole thing down on that, you're going to kind of have to build it in place. Which means, A, you can get a nice, I mean, you can slather a whole bunch of epoxy in there, get that joint secure as the live-long day. But you have to cut, you're going to have to cut a channel right in here to run that ribbon cable up. The channel is going to have to go through that and then into this pocket so that you can run your wiring out to the nacelle circuit, and there's a light that goes back here that lights up the back of the tail end of the warp engine. There is a clear ball here, you can see, that gets an orange light as well. So you're going to have to cut into it here to allow wiring. We're going to have to cut down into that pocket to allow for the ribbon cable. And that's the amount of work that needs to be done on the nacelle. On the pylon, we're going to have to cut a U-channel out of here, and then we're going to have to cut an access point right here so that the cable can come out of the pylon and into, this is where I'm going to set the circuit board. It's just a nice big flat empty place to set it that's nice and centrally located, and easy access to all of the lighting that's going to go on. These are, I know that Ralph's circuit is going to have 2 lights dedicated for the thruster circuit, so I can group the fiber optics on the starboard side to one bulb, the port side to another bulb, so that I don't have to try to, you know, choke them all down into one single bulb. I can spread those out a little bit, which gives me a little bit more freedom of movement without pain, and still allow wiring for like the perimeter lights that have to go up around here, as well as the beacons that go here and there, and the nav lights. So let's cut into these and get these channels open. Okay, there's one more spot on each of these pylons where it meets the top saucer part that also is going to have to get taken out just to free up room for that ribbon cable, and it's just that little hump right there. So let me finish off that bit. Okay, I've got the knockouts done at the front. I think you can see that there's ample room for the wiring to come down the front of those pylons. Now we're doing the back of them, and you may think that that's a big chunk, and it may end up being a big chunk, but I'm confident because it is overlapped by so many pieces that you will never see. There's a piece there that overlaps it. There is this big framework here that overlaps right in front of that, so I may actually have to chew into the back of that some. But by the time you put all 3 of these pieces over the front of that pylon bit, you're really not going to miss that structure. And then carry that into just the top part of this box so that I have an escape route. Okay, I'm just doing a trial run using a scrap piece of ribbon cable. This is not the actual cable from the kit, but I am checking this out just to make sure everything is going to fit and work well. Okay, this is going to work just beautifully. Beautifully, I say. Not only is the channel up through the pylon and the wiring up through the top of the pylon and into the bottom of the nacelle, but the clever way this nacelle parts are designed means this whole bit is open. It's open because you have this one last piece that goes and fits over the top, but that means you can do all of this structural work. You could conceivably fill this entire crevice with epoxy, make it as solid as you want all the live-long day, and then run the wire to the back and pop on the back, pop like that, and run the rest of the wires up to the circuit that goes up in the Bassard. If you were going to run a motor in there, if you wanted to motorize the mixing blades, you could do that if you were crafty enough. I've never been able to do it, but there's plenty of room here for a motor. The top pops on like this, boop, just like that. And what I'm going to do is all of this work and then leave the clear nacelle off, because you could pop that on from the outside at the very end, and you don't have to worry about it getting dirty or getting fogged up from clear finishes or any of that kind of stuff. So you leave the nacelle cap off, but that goes in. You do all of your works in a drawer business here, and then you pop that part on the top and you are done. There is no excuse for you not to have good, solid, well-aligned engines right there. Like I said, probably the cleverest idea I've seen. Now, the fact that this design allows you to have that open panel at the top is something new. You can't really blame the classic Enterprise for not doing that, because you don't have an open channel at the front. But look at that. You can pop that thing down, run your wiring up to your circuit board, and Bob's your uncle. You are done. So enough of all of these catchphrases and well-worn aphorisms. I need to do the same work over here, and then I will truly be ready for when the circuit board comes. I've just spent the last few minutes trying out the masks for other parts of the saucer, top of the saucer, the reddish stripes that go along the back of the horseshoe there. There's windows along the back stack there. Of course, the saucer windows all get masked. And I like these. I'm actually only masking the actual little bit of the window, which will allow the primer and the paints to go into the frames around the windows. I think that'll help close in some of that area and help light block. There, come on, focus. There you go. But that way it also allows you to paint into the window frames, and only masks off the glass at the back. That's the idea. Well, good morning. It's Friday. It is the last work day of the week. It is the third day of the imposed snowbargo. No mail Wednesday, no mail Thursday. If I don't get mail today, I'm going to go nuts. It's gone from winter wonderland to icy prison. And it's going to force me, if I don't get the lighting kit today, to start painting, and I'm not really prepared to start painting, so I may have to back up and punt and work on another kit, and kind of put this aside until I can get some lighting, because I'm really to the point where I don't want to. I need to start installing lights before I start painting. One thing I can do today, and I think I will go ahead and do that and get prepared, is all of these thruster LED fiber optics. I have got to stop calling them LEDs. They are fiber optics. I always confuse those two terms. Anyway, these are fiber optics. I have bloomed them and stuck them in, and I have epoxied them from the inside. They are good and steady and not going anywhere. What I'd like to do is take a drop of Tulip Slick, the white in this case, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little scab. Put a little scab on the top of these because they're big enough. I wouldn't do this with really fine fiber optics. I would just worry about nipping those off or trimming them later. But because these are the big fat 1mm, I can put a little drop of the basically white paint on top of these, and this will act like a scab that I can go ahead and paint and then pop that scab off and clean up the top of the fiber optics that way. Sort of like a liquid mask, but it will handle the contour of the tops of those blooms much better. And that's what I'm going to do now. And there you can see I just put a little dollop of the Tulip Slick on the tops of those fiber optics, and it's thick enough that it can easily pop off with a X-Acto when the time comes. I have used a liquid mask for this before in the past, and I have used clear canopy cement for this in the past, and even Elmer's glue. And the secret is to have something that's thick enough that will dry and make an instant scab over the top of that that can be easily popped off, and I found that the slick was best for that. Well, huzzahs and handsprings. I got lighting kit today. Yes, this is North Carolina, where the predominant method of snow removal is called the sun. Things are left to melt, and as a taxpayer, I have to agree, because, you know, I would hate to see them spending millions of dollars on snow removal equipment at the taxpayers' expense for the 2 times a year that they would actually need it. So I can gripe and whine about the inconvenience because that's my nature. But we seem to be over the dry spell now, and the lighting kit is here, so I'm going to dive into this and see what Ralph has wrought. Okay, we're definitely seeing signs of life here. I've just cobbled together some understanding of Ralph's instructions here, and seeing how it looks in the actual practice here. And Ralph done perfect, because here's one thing I wanted to make sure he did, and that was to put a hole in the center of the circuit board that this insert can simply sit over top of. Now I'm going to put a clear yellow on that plastic just to warm it up a little bit more. But them's the orange lights that we're talking about. Ralph's board includes a speed control for these. Don't worry about that. I just haven't had that part of it hooked up yet. But that's it exactly. Now I can start assembling the nacelles and all of the other bits. And remember to take it slow and easy today. I don't want to rush through this, but we'll see how much we can get done. And once more, without the overhead fluorescent light on it. These are the lights that go in the back of the nacelles. This one, engine light, goes like that to light up that back of the nacelle. So I need to do, obviously, some light blocking. That'll help. Okay, I've toyed and tinkered with this long enough. I think I am appropriately familiar with how it's going to work. And the biggest problem I had was determining which one of these is the right and left circuit, which one is giving me the counterclockwise and the clockwise spin. Well, now I think I've got those two straightened out, and it wasn't as easy as you thought it might be. So now I need to take all this wiring apart and start applying it to the inside of the ship. The first thing to do would be to attach this board inside the body there and run the nacelle wiring. Okay, I think I've got the wires test fitted. This whole desk is becoming a bit of a war zone, so I'm going to do this bit of gluing and then put aside and start cleaning some stuff, and then see what tiny little bits of light placement I can do, and then it will be time to start doing the serious work on the Bassards, like painting the backs of these and things like that, to get into actual nacelle construction. But I want to go ahead and glue these in, and I'm going to use the 1 minute epoxy on those, just to make sure that they are good and clamped and forever, hallelujah, attached to each other. And I've got all the clamps out I think I'll ever need, but because this is 1 minute stuff, I gotta move pretty quickly on it. So let's see how quickly we can go. Well, huzzah! In a day of huzzahs, I have another huzzah. The first non-primer paint has gone down. The first bit of actual color for the ship has gone down, and that is the backing plates. These will go in front of the circuit boards for the Bassard collectors. And let's see, that is drying. That is the epoxy on the pylons. And I've got one last job to do today, and I think I'm going to try to start putting in the very delicate, very tiny, very wee marker lights here that go on either side, because I need to glue those down and then put the wall sections over top of them, and that will finish up the wall sections. Okay, this may look like a mess, but trust me, this is progress. All the wiring is into here. I am starting to attach like the running lights wiring in here. Boy, that is really fine wiring. And there's the ribbon cable going up to the nacelles that go to the magic board that make it go spinny. So yes, it looks a bit primitive, but this is where the rubber starts to truly meet the road. Here are the backing plates for the nacelles. They will go over top of the circuit boards like that, and then into here like that. It'll all come together. And this is where we're going to close it off for the week. A little bit of last minute flurry, but keeping with the snow theme of the week, a flurry is good. And that's it for this week on the Franklin. Hope you enjoyed the shots of nature and the little amount of work that I did get done. Actually, this not getting the board until today, it did allow me to take my time and do the things that I needed to do, that I wasn't rushing the board in. I've spoken to Ralph this afternoon, and of course we're constantly communicating back and forth as to what the lighting kit is doing right, where it could use some tweaking, what he might consider for his commercial release, things to change, things to add, things to take away, things like that. So by and large, everything is going swimmingly. Just be a question of starting to nail some of these details down and get the things, you know, get like the board attached down, and I could really start working on these nacelles. Speaking with a little bit of a cold still, the nacelles done. Starting to plan where the wires go and all of that. Getting the outboard pieces nailed on, which is the important thing. And then I can start painting. Who knows? I can start putting paint on this next week. And getting the stripes figured out, that was fun. Getting the templates done for that, that went pretty smoothly. For the red stripes, that will not be included with the decal set. The reddish orange bits that go on the pylons. There's some big distinctive markings that will go there. And so as we progress, so shall we do. And I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, nature sometimes sets its own calendar and things you have to abide by. So until next week, when we should be able to go full steam ahead on finishing up get the wiring all in and maybe get this thing closed up. We'll say have a good week. Be good to each other. Be good to each other. If you had some snow, go out and play in it. And we will see you here next week.